If everyone's ready, Justin, go ahead and begin recording, and let's begin. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to this live webinar to introduce you to the university's new electronic travel and expense reimbursement systems. The goal for today is extremely simple, and it is to give you a broad demonstration of these new systems. There's basically 5 elements that we're going to expose you to. Number 1, the creation of a user profile. Number 2, booking travel. Before that, let's throw number 3 out there, making a travel request. And then 4 and 5 would be a travel expense report and reimbursement, and 5, a non-travel expense reimbursement. The target audience, those of you in the audience, are virtually anyone in the University main system who travels on behalf of the University main system, or makes travel arrangements, and or completes the travel reimbursement requests for others. So this is a general demonstration designed for the majority of the University main system users, travelers, and those submitting expense requests. So you may be asking, why have you been chosen to be part of this Phase 1 implementation? Well, because we believe that you are extremely well suited as early adopters of these new systems. Why did we say that? Well, number 1, because it's likely that based on your history, you'll actually have travel activity during February and March. Number 2, because your Chief Financial Officer, your CFO, supports your participation. Number 3, you may also be chosen because you're involved in athletic travel, which is a little unique. And number 4, perhaps a companion to that one, is that you may have complicated travel requirements and may use an assistant to help you make those arrangements. If this last example is true of you, we've endeavored to invite not only you, but your travel arranger, your delegate as well. Let me just say a word about what we hope to get from you, those of you participating in the Phase 1 of this implementation. Number 1, in mid-February, we're hoping that you'll actually begin using the systems. And then, number 2, during the course of, say, the next month or so, while you're using these systems, we're hoping that you'll give us helpful feedback so that we can fine-tune the systems, make improvements, and fine-tune and make improvements to the training materials in preparation for the full rollout of these systems to all 7 campuses during April. Your primary presenters today will be Stephanie LeBlanc, Procurement Card Administrator for the University Main System, and Justin Gregg, Strategic Account Manager with Shorts Travel Management. In addition, Mike Noblet, Director of Procurement Operations for the University Main System, will be monitoring the chat log and responding to some of those. Let's go ahead and take a look at that second slide. Here's the agenda for the next 2 hours. First, introduction and goals. That's what I've been doing, giving you an overview of what we're hoping to accomplish and why you've been invited. Then, Stephanie and Justin will help you by helping you to understand these new systems, the Concur Travel and Expense System and Shorts Travel Management Company. Then we'll dive into the details, and Stephanie and Justin will help you understand the Concur Travel and Expense Management System beyond the basics. This will be followed by a Q&A, and then we'll leave you with some helpful contacts, dates, and links. So if you're ready, let's turn our attention now to Stephanie, and she will help us to understand these new systems. Stephanie?
Thank you, David. To briefly go over the Concur Travel and Expense System, it is a leading, industry-leading travel and expense platform that's being used across the country as well as around the world. It provides us the ability to do electronic travel requests, which will replace our paper travel authorization forms that we currently use. It will allow us to have automated travel booking through the Concur booking tool, which will be done online. It also enables us to do expense report creation and approval online so that we can see the workflow process and where documents are sitting and really have a good sense of what are the next steps that need to happen with travel. It also allows us to do employee reimbursement online versus the paper form that we have been using in the past. The employee reimbursement will also follow an electronic workflow process for approval. We also have the ability to have a receipt store, and the receipt store is set up in a user's profile where receipts can be emailed, faxed, uploaded, photographed with mobile, and all maintained within the system so that when you get ready to do your expense reporting, those images are there for you to attach to the appropriate expenses. With all these tools, it is of course going to provide us enhanced travel reporting and for us to be able to better capture travel spend within the university, and also help us to consolidate that spend and obtain better contracts so that we can offer better pricing to our university employees and travelers. So that's kind of an overview of the travel and expense system, and I'm going to turn it over to Justin so he can give you a little briefing about short travel management.
Thank you, Stephanie. Shorts Travel has been in business for quite some time now, and we are very excited to work with the University of Maine Systems in providing quality travel services to you. Today's demonstration is going to be primarily about the online booking tool referred to as Concur, as well as the expense system. In addition to what I'm going to demo to you today for Concur Travel, we do have agents, travel agents, who are willing and able to assist you should that need arise, and the information to contact those agents will be provided when you receive full access to the system at a later time. A little bit about Shorts Travel. We do have 45 different university programs. Over 100 athletic departments work with us, and most notably the NCAA is our partner as well from a travel perspective. We do have services available 24 hours a day during core business hours. Fee information and things of that will be shared with you at a later date as well. I think that's about it, Stephanie.
Thank you, Justin. So now, according to our agenda, let's jump right into the Concur online system. So I'm going to log in, and does my screen look okay? Because I know that there's a lot of content within Concur, so I just want to make sure that it's visible to everybody that's on the call. You can just type in the chat if you want to respond. Okay, it seems like it's looking
Stephanie, looks good. It looks good to us too.
Okay, great, thank you. So when we first log into Concur, the most important thing is going to be for people to go in and update their profile within the system. So up on the right-hand corner, I would click on Profile, and I'm going to go to Profile Settings. The first area that I'm going to cover is the personal, under Profile Options, is the personal information. And excuse me while I log in again, because I've logged in as a different person. On accident. We have a lot of logins for the testing purposes. So let's see. Yes, now I'm William Never. So let's go into Profile Settings. As you can see, I have a lot more options as Mr. Never than what I just had. So I'm going to go into personal information. The most important piece, or one of the most important pieces, is this important note that's in yellow. The name, how your name appears within here is what is fed over from the PeopleSoft system that we currently maintain. This information needs to reflect, if you're a traveler, the exact naming as it is on your government ID that you're going to be using for travel. So if there is a change, for instance, if your passport says William S. Never, and this says William Stephen Never, then you'll want to contact Nina Connors, our travel administrator, and give her the updated information so that this will actually match your ID so that you will not run into issues with security in trying to go through TSA. Down below that, we have company information, which should have your employee ID. It will also indicate who your manager is. You'll want to check that and make sure that that's accurate. The university classification and affiliated campus, these are both required fields. Those fields enable Shorts Travel to do reporting for us based upon the different locations and based upon the different classification that a user has identified. The next section would be your work address information to fill in, your home address if you'd like to provide that. The next important area is your contact information. As you can see, the work phone says required and home phone says required. In order to book travel, one of those fields needs to be completed. If you are a traveler, I would recommend putting in both numbers, and I'd also recommend putting in your mobile phone number so that if for some reason the university or Shorts Travel needed to contact you during your trip, they would have multiple ways of trying to get in touch with you, especially if you're on the road. Down below that, we have email addresses. Here is where you'd indicate your email address and specify whether or not you wanted to be contacted regarding travel. It's very important that you have an email address set up, and it needs to have the main.edu domain. The receipt store that I mentioned in the introduction will require that you use the domain main.edu for the system to recognize who you are, to be able to put those receipts and images into the correct repository for the user. The next important piece is where you can see that William S. Never has not verified his email address. You will want to verify, and that's simply clicking on verify, and then it's going to send you an email, and it's going to send you a code that you would put in here to verify your email address. If your email address is not verified, you will not be able to automatically email your receipts into the receipt store. The system requires that your email address be verified for that functionality to work. The next important piece is the emergency contact information. If you're a traveler, you should probably fill that out in case somebody needed to contact you through somebody else. The next area would be your travel preferences. You can certainly set up the eligibility that you may have for discount travel rates. You can set up your air travel preferences, whether you prefer an aisle seat or a window seat. You can also set up your hotel preferences, that you don't care, that you want a queen bed or a twin bed or a single, whether you want smoking or non-smoking. When you set these preferences up, these preferences will automatically be pulled into the Concur online booking tool, so that when you go in to create your itineraries for travel through Concur and book your hotels and your airfare, it will automatically bring in those preferences for you. So you do not have to go in every time you go into booking. You don't have to set those preferences every time. It will just automatically feed in. The next important area is the frequent traveler programs. Here you can add a program, and you could add your frequent traveler information along with your frequent traveler number. You simply click on this add a program, and here is where you can select your type of carrier and enter in your number. This way also, if this information is completed here, this information also feeds over into Concur booking tool, so that when you're booking through online through Concur, your frequent traveler information is already there and available for you for when you get ready to book your travel. The next important piece is the TSA secure flight information. This is required information. You'll need to indicate whether you're male or female, and then you'll also need to put in your date of birth. And when you put in your date of birth, it will appear as it does here, because I've already entered Mr. Never's date of birth, and it will appear as all X's. That is just for security purposes. You won't be able to see it, and administrators won't be able to see it, delegates won't be able to see it. But if it's all X's like that, then it is accurate. The other thing is that if you happen to know your TSA pre-check number, you can certainly enter that information, that number, in this field. And again, when you get ready to book your airfare, it will automatically identify you that you're a TSA pre-checked person, and it will put that number on your ticket for you. If you happen to be an international traveler and or you just happen to have a passport, you can add your passport information in here or simply click off I do not have a passport. If you have an international visa, you can also put that information in here as well. Oops, sorry. Down below that we have assistants and travel arrangers. Here is where William Never has actually set Stephanie LeBlanc up so that she can actually book travel. So I can log into the Concur booking tool and I can administer my booking and create my itinerary as though I was William Never. So here is where you can set up if you want to have other people to be able to make travel arrangements for you. You would certainly just need to set them up in here. And then, and then lastly, down at the bottom, we have credit card information. Here, this happens to be just for the demo purposes, but here is where your travel card information would appear so that when you get ready to book travel, that information, once again, will automatically flow to the Concur booking tool so that you do not need to enter in your travel card information every time you need to book a trip. So I'm going to scroll back up. So there's quite a bit of information here for you to go in and complete, but it's all valuable information. On the left-hand side, you can see that there are a lot of different areas. Under request settings, you can see request delegates. And if I select that, here is where I can select another employee to be a delegate. And this, William Never has set up Stephanie LeBlanc as a request delegate. And what this means is that Stephanie can prepare, can submit, because he has given her just about all rights, and can view his receipts, and she can also receive emails on his behalf. And if William Never is an approver, somebody who needs to approve other people's requests and travel expense reports, she can also approve on his behalf. That approval can be set as temporary so that if William Never just happens to be going on vacation or a retreat for a period of time, he can simply put in can approve temporary and put those dates in there, and during that time frame only, Stephanie LeBlanc would have the ability to approve. So let's scroll down a little bit more. The next important thing that you will want to do when you log into your profile for the first time is to go to Personal Car. Personal car registration is the area in which enables the system to be able to calculate your mileage rate based upon the contract that you have with the university. Everybody within the university is entitled to the university standard mileage rate, but for some contracts, if you carpool, you are enabled to get additional, at this time, additional 5 cents for carpooling. So if you want to take advantage of that carpooling rate, you need to set up a personal car registration to get the standard mileage rate and another to get that university rate. As you can see here, the starting month is July because that's the beginning of our fiscal year. So July 1st of every year, the system is going to automatically reset your calculated mileage. So the added benefit of this is that the system now will automatically accumulate and keep track of your mileage. So if you happen to be on a contract that say that like at 5,000 miles for the fiscal year, your mileage rate bumps up another 5 cents. That has all been programmed behind the scenes. So as the system accumulates your mileage and you reach that 5,000 mile threshold, the system is automatically going to know and say William Never now gets an additional 5 cents for his mileage from this point forward. So it's important for you to set that up so that the system will know. So I'm going to set it up right now during this demo mode so that when we get ready to do an expense report, I'll have the information available to be able to show you how it works. So I'm simply going to click New. Now here, the first field is the initial distance. I'm going to leave that at 0. If you happen to be a traveler this fiscal year and you know what your accumulated mileage is, you will want to put that in there so that the system will automatically calculate the correct mileage rate for you from the point when you log in and get ready to do your expense report and forward. For the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to leave it at 0. But if I knew that my accumulated mileage up to this point was 5,000 miles, I'd put 5,000 in there. My vehicle ID, which is, you can use any naming convention that you want to within here, I'm just going to call it standard university rate. And this is my base rate that I'm going to get for mileage. My vehicle type, I'm currently logged in as William Never, and he's faculty, so I'm going to select the AFUM mileage, which is the standard mileage rate, and click Save. Now, because I'm faculty, my contract also enables me to take advantage of the carpooling rate. So I want to set that rate up so I have it available when I get ready to do an expense report. So I'm simply going to click New, and my vehicle ID is going to be, I'm going to say carpooling rate. And my vehicle type is now the AFUM carpool mileage. And I'm going to select Save. This way here, the system knows that for my profile, it's going to use the AFUM mileage for standard mileage rate, and then it's going to use the AFUM carpool mileage when I put in for mileage reimbursement for carpooling. So let's just take a look at a couple more things here. E-receipt activation. E-receipts, I would highly recommend that you activate that. That way, if we have a supplier or a vendor or a hotel, for instance, that has that capability, they can actually automatically send your receipt electronically into your receipt store. So when you check out of the hotel, your receipt would actually go out, it would be emailed out, and it would actually end up in your receipt store. So you wouldn't need to actually take a photo of it with your mobile device or scan it into the system. It should already be there for you. And you can set it up for car, and it will be set up, and it will work for car, hotel, and taxi, any of those venues that have that service available. Here is also where you would change your password if you want to change the password on your user profile for whatever reason. You can do travel, vacation, reassignment. You can also do mobile registration. Mobile registration is the Concur online mobile tool that's available. You can set it up so you can reset your password, or you can create a mobile PIN so that when you go to log in on your mobile device to get into Concur, you can simply enter in a 4-digit PIN versus having to put in your entire password on your cell phone. And by using the mobile tool, you can still book your travel, file your expense reports. If you're an approver, you can also approve on your mobile device. So it does give you a lot of flexibility while you're on the road so that you can keep up with your expenses and your reporting. The mobile device also enables you to take a snapshot of your receipt and actually automatically pull that into your receipt store as well. So you can either submit that through your mobile device, or you can wait until you get back to the office, sit down, and those receipts are going to all be there that you had accumulated while you were on your trip. So that's kind of the overview of the user profile. Important, make sure your name is accurate for your government documentation. Make sure you set up your personal car. And then just go through and verify information and fill in information that is vital, especially if you're a traveler. So the first step in our course of travel would of course be to create that travel request. And that travel request is the electronic version of what we have currently been using, which is the travel authorization form. So I'm going to demonstrate setting up a request for travel. So I would simply go to Requests. And from this screen, you can see that I have Manage Requests. I already have some requests in here because this is the test environment or demo environment that we're using for the purposes of these sessions. And it will give me the request name. It will give me the request ID number. That request ID number is important. You'll need that number when you get ready to book your travel. It links your request to your booking to verify that you have received approval. It also gives me the status. As I can see, all of these requests have been approved. I actually had a comment on this last one, so that appears here. It shows me my request dates of when I want to be traveling, and it also shows me the date that I submitted it for approval, and it gives me the total amount of the request and then the amount that has been approved and how much I have left on that request. Over here in the action column, if I had gone to my conference in Boston, I can certainly click that expense and it will take me directly into the expense side and allow me to create the travel expense report from this screen. For the purposes, though, of what we're doing, I'm going to simply click New Request. The first thing that I'm going to put in is the request name, and I'm going to call my request Conference to Dallas. And my start date for my trip is going to be July 15th, and I'm going to return on July 20th. The purpose of my trip, again, is conference and training. I have other options. It could be for an event. It could be for an off-site meeting. It could be for student recruitment. I'm going to select conference and training. My type of travel, I'm going from Maine to Dallas. So, of course, I'm going to have my travel type be out of state. The travel type is what is going to drive the GL account when we get ready to do our expenses. So in order for it to hit the correct general ledger account, I want to make sure that I'm selecting out-of-state travel. Now here, the system has automatically populated my default chart field information that's assigned to my user profile. If I want to change that, I can simply click on Business Unit. Down here, it gives me the ability to select any of the 8 business units. So this system does have the functionality for you to be able to do things across the system and not just within your business unit or your campus. Up above here, I can see these 2 that are in bold. These are the 2 that I've most frequently used or that I have just used, which gives me the entire chart field string. So I'm going to select my default up here, my top one, and I'm going to change it to procurement operations. It's already given me my fund and it's given me my operating unit. If I had a program associated with it, I'd need to enter that here. If I had a project, I would be able to enter it, and we still have the ability to put in a class code if we need to use that for our departments. Here is where I can put in a comment if I want to put additional information in there that I may feel the approver wants to know or needs to know in regards to this request. Also down here, if I needed a cash advance, I could put in my cash advance amount and also put in a cash advance comment saying maybe why do I need this cash? What does this cover? To give the approver more information so it will be processed maybe a little bit clearer for that person without having to send it back and ask me additional questions. So I may want to clarify what that is for here. The next thing that I need to do with my request is that I need to associate expenses with it. So I'm going to click on the Expense tab. Now with the expenses, with the request is going to enable the system to actually, whatever I put in here for amounts, it's actually going to go out and it's going to go out to PeopleSoft. And what it's going to do is it's going to encumber those funds for me within PeopleSoft. So when my department head or the financial person for our department goes in and looks at the GL inquiry, they'll be able to see that there are encumbered funds out there for upcoming travel. So those funds are kind of now set aside. We know who's traveling, when they're traveling, and how much they anticipated to spend during that trip. So I'm going to Dallas, so I think I'm going to fly there and I'm not going to drive. So I'm going to select airfare. And then I need to choose my transaction date. And that defaults to the first date of my trip, so I'm going to select that. I could enter a description if I wanted to, and I could also enter a comment. And I'm going to estimate that my airfare is going to be $725. And I'm going to click Save. The other thing that I know that I'm going to need while I'm there is that I'm going to need a hotel. So I'm going to click on a hotel for individual because it's just myself. And again, the transaction date is going to be my start date of my trip. And I'm going to say that my hotel expenses is $450. And I'm going to say save. The other thing that while I'm there, I may need to rent a car. So I'm going to select car rental, my beginning date, and I'm going to say my car rental expenses are going to be $125. And I'm going to click save. This is a conference. I know that I'm going to have a conference registration fee associated with that trip. And I'm going to say my conference registration is $150 and click save. So over here I can see that it's accumulating the amount and then the requested amount that I'm asking for. So currently I'm asking for $1,450. So this amount, if I was to submit it at this point, would actually go out to PeopleSoft, and it would encumber those funds in the GL inquiry for me. Now I also know that I may have some travel meal expenses. I can enter in that expense as well. And I can see my travel meals is going to be $75. Again, these are estimates on what you think your trip is going to entail. So you want to be accurate because, again, you are going to be encumbering those funds on the budget. And it's also going to give a good picture for your approver on exactly how much the trip is going to cost and know whether or not you're going to be within the budget and have the funds available. If I then click on the Approval Flow tab, I can see that my manager is Stephanie LeBlanc. So I know that when I go to submit this request, it's going to go out to Stephanie LeBlanc for her approval. Up here is my unique request ID number. My request ID number is 33CQ. I want to take note of that so that once it's approved, that when I go in to book my Concur travel, I'll have that number available, the alpha, actually it's alpha numeric digits available to me when I get ready to book, because it's going to ask me as one of the steps when I get ready. So at this point, everything looks good. My request header has all the information in the correct default chart field information. My expenses all I've included everything that I can think of that I'm going to spend on this trip. And so I have the option if I wanted to have an attachment. So if I had the conference agenda, for example, I can certainly attach that to this request if needed. If there were other documentation that the approver required of me, I can use that to attach. I could print and email it at this time. I could also say, no way, this is not happening. It's just out of budget and I need to remove it. I can certainly delete my request at this point, or I can submit my request for approval. So I'm going to submit my request for approval, and it's going to confirm. You get a brief screen that says that it's confirmed that it's been submitted. And here I can see, here's my conference to Dallas. Here's my request ID that I'll need for booking once it's approved. And I can see the status right here that it's waiting for Stephanie LeBlanc to approve it. Once the request has been submitted for approval, the approver should be receiving an email letting them know that they have a request out there pending for them to go into the system and to approve. And again, they can do that through their desktop or through their laptop, or they can certainly do it from their mobile device as well if they happen to be on the road. So that are kind of the steps that it's going to take for you to do the request for travel. The process has not changed, that a request for travel needs to be done up front before any booking can happen. So our next step, if our request was approved, which we're going to say it is for the sake of this demonstration, and I'm going to actually turn it over to Justin, and Justin's actually going to take us out to the Concur booking tool and actually show us how to book our trip and the functionality of the system.
Thank you, Stephanie. I believe I've given myself access there. Can everybody see my screen okay? All right, here we go. So as Stephanie just mentioned, and one thing I want to start back with as our origination point is the purpose of looking at your profile is that as you continue through the booking and travel process, and we dig deeper into the weeds on this one, if you will, I want to go up and make sure that we express when she showed giving rights and privileges to a travel arranger. How do you arrange? You're logging in as yourself, and you'll know that when you get to the travel screen, it'll say, I'm booking for myself. If I wanted to book for a guest traveler, meaning someone who does not have a profile, a incoming recruit from an athletic perspective, a seminar speaker that we are hosting at the university and bringing them in and we're making their travel arrangements, you would utilize that feature right here by say book for a guest, and now it will change to say booking for a guest. The information as you go through the series that will pre-populate for you because you do have a profile, because you're booking for a guest, you will need to have that information available to you to enter along the way. Most notably, the traveler's TSA required information, so their full name as it appears on their government-issued ID, their date of birth, their gender, an email address, and a telephone number. The same basic requirements that Stephanie reviewed during the review of setting up your own profile. If you are making arrangements for another profiled traveler, you go up to the Profile tab in the top right-hand corner. You'll notice that I am William Stephen Never, and I have been given privileges to book on behalf of William L. Never. We'll refer to him as my brother today. And so my brother William, if I want to make arrangements for him, I simply select his name, and I say apply. And now I'm an administrator for William L. Never. You'll see that it's alerting me that from his profile, he is not signed up to receive e-receipts. His passport is about to expire. Probably need to make sure that he knows that or update it for him. And this is how I would go through the process of making arrangements for William L. Never. If I were done with this and I wanted to go back and make arrangements for myself, I would say end the admin session, and I am back into making arrangements for myself. Okay. Continuing on to kind of visually direct you around the screen, you do have a series of travel alerts that will be pushed out to you from time to time. What is TripIt? TripIt is a program that is a mobile app that allows you to download and instantly an app to your mobile device, and when you make your arrangements through Concur Travel, it will sync to your mobile device, so you will have your travel information with you as you are on your trip. Again, as was mentioned earlier by Stephanie, we encourage you to sign up for e-receipts because as you go through the process, if I were to make a reservation at a participating hotel, for example, that does participate in the e-receipt, after I check out of that hotel, they will send the receipt back through the process because I reserved it through Concur, and it will automatically, the e-receipt will be in my expense reimbursement claim. If we wanted any company notes, I could select this, and this is where you'll have information about how to reach out to Shorts Travel, upcoming trips, and any trips that I have removed as I've gone through things. That is also found under your trips library, and we'll show that here in just a second as we continue the demonstration. So under the travel tool, what we're going to spend the majority of our time on is I will show you we're going to do a round trip. If I wanted to do a one-way trip, or if I wanted to do a multi-segment trip, I would just select the appropriate radial button here. And if it's a multi-segment trip, you can add, I believe it's up to 4 different segments for one trip. On a round trip, we're going to, for today's demonstration, we are going to go from Portland You'll notice the type ahead feature. It tries to help narrow down my search of what I'm looking for. And as Stephanie mentioned, we're going to go to Dallas for our conference. For areas such as Dallas that have multiple airports, there's a nice feature within Concur that does allow you to select all Dallas area airports, as well as if you knew specifically if you wanted to go to Dallas-Fort Worth or if you want to go to Dallas-Love Field. For today's demonstration, we are going to show all airports in the Dallas area to show you how that works. Again, you'll remember that our travel dates were July 15th. We want to depart in the morning. We could expand that section here if I wanted to change my time. I've got the slider bar here to change that. I could also expand my search from I want to depart at 9 a.m. and I want my search results to come back and show me flights that are 4 hours before 9 a.m. and 4 hours that are after 9 a.m. So I'm actually looking at an 8-hour search window for my departing flights. If I want to expand that search to look at all-day flights, I would select 23. Please note that if you do increase this plus or minus default setting, it will slow down the response time of the search results coming back to your screen. On the return, we're coming back on the 20th of July, and our conference ends at noon, but we also want to try to see if we can get home in time for our son or daughter's soccer game that they have going on that afternoon or evening. So we're going to try to see if we can actually arrive home by 3 o'clock, and again, plus or minus 4 hours will be our default setting. As Stephanie indicated, we are going to need a rental car to get around while we're there, and we are going to, for purposes of demonstration, we are going to show the selection of a hotel, and I'll also address conference hotel rates in just a moment. So again, we have the option here. We could search plus or minus 5 miles. I could increase this if I wanted to. I could type in 10 miles if I wanted to. But again, we're going to try to keep it simple and go 5 miles. If I knew the actual address, I could type that in here. If I don't know the address and I know a reference point, which is what we're going to use today, I know based on my invitation that it's at the Dallas Conference Center. If we want our search results to come back by price or by schedule, I personally like to choose by price. And it's going to verify which conference center am I looking for. There appears to be multiple conference centers. Oh, I'm sorry, I typed in the wrong word here for what I'm looking for. We're looking at a convention center, not a conference center. Excuse me. Now we'll do our search. And there are 4 locations found for a convention center. And the one that if we look back at our conference invitation, says it's actually the Irving Convention Center. We're going to choose that. And now we're into the search. Searching for our flights during our trip detail of dates, the July 15th through the 20th. And you'll notice to the left-hand side, as my results are continuing to populate, it shows a nice trip summary so you'll know where you are in the process. We're currently at the process of selecting our flight. We will then move to selecting a car, and we can select a hotel. If at this point in time I knew I didn't want that car, I could remove that from this routine and it would just go straight to the hotel. You'll notice that I have 472 results in this nice matrix. If I wanted to see just the Delta flights and narrow my search down, you'll notice at the bottom of the screen here that my results changed just to show the Delta flights. If I wanted to see just the one-stop flights, the 321 stops, I can do it that way and just narrows my searches down from that perspective. If at this point in time I wanted to switch over to shop by schedule and piece together my flight, I could do that. I could select my outbound and then I could select my return separate if I wanted to do that. Another very nice feature is the ability to kind of shop on the go, if you will. So we're going to make our results show all of our results at this point. We're going to do a little comparison, and you'll notice, remember, we selected all Dallas area airports, and you can see that by the airport codes. This is the Dallas Love Field airport code, and then our Dallas-Fort Worth airport code. So we do have results going in and out of both of the airports that are available to us. Another thing I'll show you is that the fares, as we start to look at them, the ones that are in green with a check mark, those are in policy settings. If we had a search result where I can change my settings here, if I wanted to see the highest price ones, not that that's what we should do, you'll notice that anything that is outside of policy has a yellow alert button, and if I were to try to select this, it's going to tell me why. The flight selected is not compliant with the policy, which is set that we would like University of Maine Systems employees to travel within $200 of the lowest possible airfare. If I do select this, it's going to require me to choose a reason code and enter a reason so that my approval will understand why I'm making this selection. I'll also point out while we're on this screen, I have a flight here that is showing in red text. And red is kind of an alerting color to us. And what it's telling us is that the return flight is a 4-hour and 10-minute layover. So it's letting us know things that probably don't want to make this selection. If I wanted to see the details of that flight, I can see that here's my connection on my return where I arrive at 11 a.m. and I'm actually not departing until 3:10, so I'd have quite a bit of time at the airport. Again, we're going to go back and change our setting to search by the lowest possible fare, and we're going to competitively shop along the way. So you'll notice here, I'm going to select this Southwest flight, and I'm going to choose the compare feature, and it moves that to my compare list out of all of my other results. We're also going to select a Delta flight, kind of like that one, and let's go out here and see if we can find a United flight that we like, just to shop across the air carriers. And if I want to compare that one, I simply bring it to the top of the screen, and at this point I can bring together flights and say, what do I like about these, what do I not like about them? Oh, I have one in red text here that tells me that I have a 42-minute short turnaround in a connection, so there's a high likelihood that that flight may or may not be delayed. So we're going to select if I were also, something I need to show you is, you'll notice the difference in a Southwest fare and a Delta or United. As you know, if you're a Southwest traveler, they have the various price settings. So you have to select fares, and then it describes, I want the wanna get away, the anytime, or the business select. And again, to be policy compliant, we always want to choose the lowest possible fare that we can. So we would want to make sure that we select the wanna get away fares for both options. And if this were our choice, we would push select at this button here. If we want to select the Delta flight, which is what we're going to do today, we simply click select because there are no fare options on Delta such as there are on Southwest. So now we're reviewing our airfare selection. We can see here's our flights that we're taking, our connection times. We're reviewing our traveler information, and again, this is the beauty of Concur and your profile is all of my information just came in here. If I were booking for the guest, as I mentioned at the very beginning, this information would need to be manually entered by the arranger making those arrangements for that guest. If I had frequent traveler numbers, frequent flyer programs, those would also come from my profile, and I would not have to enter them. If I do have one and I did not have it in my profile, I could simply add that right here. This is also where I go ahead and make my seat selection. We're going to select, there's a lot of availability. We'll set back here where no one is at this point in time for this flight. We'll say select seat. It also gives me an opportunity to see how full these flights are by looking at the seat map. As if I maybe need to consider, is this the right time for me to make my arrangements, or can I wait for a little bit longer to book my flights? Okay, so that was the first leg of a one-stop flight. I now, on my outbound, also need to select my seat on the second leg, and I like to stay in the same seat if at all possible. Makes it easier for me when I board that plane. I know where I'm going. Okay, so we've selected both of those seats. We'll close this window, and you'll see that now as a part of my itinerary I've chosen seat 16C and seat 16C. I'm intentionally not going to choose flights for my return because I want to show that how that automatically populates for you whenever you leave it blank from your profile. Here's my form of payment that again would come from my profile. All the nice disclaimers that everybody likes to read and click OK to. going to reserve our flight and continue. Take this second while it is reserving those flights to remind everyone, if you do have questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat feature, and Mike will be happy to reply to them. Okay, so we've reserved the flights, and now we're retrieving the itinerary. And then we're going to do our car search. Okay. So now our car results are going to come back, and you'll know that we're on that section here because our trip summary of where we are in the process. Similar to the air return, we have a nice matrix here that tells us all the available ones, and if, again, we wanted to narrow down, I could simply select any one of these boxes and it will narrow my search down. Policy settings, since we touched on those for the air reservation, policy settings, as you know, are we're supposed to book cars that are intermediate size or less. If we did want to try to select a full-size car based on the number of people who were riding with us on this trip, we would have to insert a reason code if I were to make this selection. We're going to stay policy compliant in this situation, and we're actually going to pick this enterprise car right here. We'll say select. And very similar to the air review, we have a car review. Want to verify that we've got the right times in here. We're picking up the car, and it will default automatically to the time that you arrive and the time that you depart based on your flight selections, which is another nice feature. Again, it pulls all my information that comes from my profile. It tells me what my estimated cost is for the rental for the entire stay. Again, it does not include any of the fees that may be incurred during that time. And again, my profile credit card that would be used for my reservation. We'll reserve and continue on to the hotel section. The hotel section, as this is coming up, one of the things I wanted to mention, and I touched on it, was conference hotel rates. You may or may not know, but conference hotel rates are very similar to a block room rate, and those are not loaded by the hotel or made available to any travel agency. So if you are, based on your instructions from your conference registration, you're instructed and approved to stay at the conference location, then you would need to follow the instructions from your invitation to make those arrangements by contacting that hotel directly. Again, results come back very nice, and I failed to mention this before, but in each one of the air, car, and hotel search results, you have a series of filter options that can help narrow down your search a little bit more. So if I wanted to try to find hotels that were within a certain range of price, I could just use this slider bar to change what's in my results. If I were looking for a hotel in a specific chain or maybe with specific amenities, those that include breakfast with the rate, dry cleaning services, anything of that nature. Again, these are just kind of helpful to narrow down the search results that came back. Very similar to the hotel grid or the air and car grid that was at the top of those screens. So we know that our conference invitation tells us that the hotel results are provided for us if we choose to stay there at the Omni. And I thought I would just show you, for example, here, that at the Omni Hotel, Shorts Travel, one of the benefits that we do bring to the University of Maine is we belong to a bunch of different consortiums, and our overall spend across all of our clients allows us to get discounts from the best available rates that hotels offer. So at the Omni, again, this is not the conference rate, you'll see that the best available rate is $269 for the search during this time frame. Well, because Shorts belongs to a consortium that is referred to as Ovation and a lawyer's program, we can offer that same room for $209. So a fairly significant savings, and that is across all markets is where those will reside. We're going to go ahead and select this property at this time. you'll see now that our total estimated cost for our hotel, again, just like we saw for our review for the air and car section, we're reviewing the information here as well. Because this is a hotel, they do have cancellation policies that if you do not comply with those, you can be charged a no-show fee, so it's very important to review these. Most of us do tend to just scroll right past these. However, there's a nice feature within Concur that makes us at least say, I had a chance to read it and I clicked this button, so I agreed to anything that might happen. So we're making our reservation. And now we're going to bring back our full itinerary, because at this point in time we now have gone through the air, car, and hotel portion of the reservation. And we get a chance to kind of review everything together. If at this point in time I wanted to print this itinerary, I could. If I wanted to email the itinerary to a peer who may be also needing to make travel arrangements, and you could say, Jim, this is the trip that I'm planning to take my reservations if you'd like to know. Or if you wanted to email that to your arranger, if you're the arranger and you're doing arrangements on their behalf, here's what I found for you. Do you like these? Are these okay? It's telling us that airfare must be ticketed by an agent, and an agent is just a term that it uses. Concur is actually your booking agent in this situation. We're reviewing our flights. If we wanted to make any changes or cancellations to our seats, you'll notice we still are in seat 16C from our selection process. We do have a confirmation number now for our enterprise rental car. We also have a confirmation number for our hotel. It reminds us what our cancellation policies are. And you'll see here that now we have been moved to seat 11C on the return flight home and seat 7B on this return flight home. If I don't like those, I could obviously change the seat and see what would be available to me. But it knew to do that based on my preference settings that I liked aisle and or window. At this time, we can compare and see the total amount that's going to be collected right now is the $385.20. The hotel is $1,200, and then I've got $334 in car. So my total estimated cost is going to be the $1,921. Tells me where my email is going to be sent after I click purchase. We'll select next at this point. This is where it gives me a chance to name this, and again, we talked about our trip description was to attend a conference. If we had any unused tickets that we wanted one of the short travel agents to apply toward the purchase of that United flight, we could definitely do that by entering the ticket number here. And again, those unused tickets will be found throughout the booking process, and in your trips library it will continue to remind you of available tickets that you may have to use. As was mentioned earlier, you do have to confirm that you have received all the budget approval to make this trip. By selecting yes, you're saying that you have followed all those compliance. And remember from Stephanie's request that we have our budget code that we need to enter, which is the 33CQ. Stephanie, I'll pause right here and see, is there anything else you wanted to add to either of these two settings that would be important to note?
Just to confirm, confirm what Justin has said, is that this is like your last opportunity to verify that this booking of this trip has been pre-approved by your supervisor and or manager, and that the budget funds do exist for you to be able to handle the expenses that you're trying to book. The request ID will be required. The system will also be open for students to be able to book travel, and the students will also have to verify that they've been approved for the trip and that it's university business and that the funds are available, and they will also be required to also put in that request ID number.
Perfect, thank you. So what can we do at this point? We could click next and continue on, but we're going to show you a feature here called Hold Trip. When I select Hold Trip, what's going to actually happen is I am holding my seat on the airline, I am holding my car reservation, and I am holding my hotel reservation. It appears that though I'm finished, but it's also giving me these, again, red is a very noticeable color to us, so it's telling us that this trip will automatically be canceled if you do not complete it by that time. So as I scroll down here, and I return to my travel center, and the reason you might want to do this is because you're waiting for your traveler, if you were the arranger, or somebody to give you kind of the green light to hit purchase. If you want to put it on hold, you can do that for 1 day. You have a 24-hour wait period, or it will automatically cancel. So again, I said at the beginning, your trips library is going to become one of your best friends each time when you log in. And for an arranger, when you log in and select your trips library, you will see those upcoming trips for all of those individuals you have access to arrange for. And you can kind of see the status of where things are. If at this point in time I wanted to cancel the trip entirely, I could do that. If I wanted to modify things, because now I've gone back and reread and reconfirmed that I can and I am approved to work with the hotel directly to stay at the conference negotiated rate, I could actually modify right now, and let's say we wanted to remove just the Omni because we're going to call them and book it directly. So we'll cancel it out of here. And just as the case whenever you agree to the hotel terms, the cancellation terms on the front end, you have to agree to them on the back end, which basically indicates that you knew you were canceling within or outside of the cancellation terms. If at this point I needed to modify anything else based on the feedback I got while I had it on hold, I could continue to make those modifications, but for demonstration purposes, we'll continue and assume that we got the green light to continue. So again, we're back at our review. We say next. We're not going to put it on hold this time. And if I want to complete one last time, I scroll to the bottom, and I have the nice button that everybody looks for, which is called Purchase the Ticket. It is saving my trip. And now we get what we're looking for, which is the finished. And we do have a record locator. There is one more thing here we'll show you in your trips library again. This ticket needs an expense report to be, it says it's ticketed at this point, so that's our status. There's one more important piece, and that is if I am, before I leave for the airport, how do I know that the actual reservation was received by Shorts Travel? And because Shorts is actually now your ticketing agent, so you'll get an email, and in that email it will be from Shorts Travel, and it will give you your actual itinerary, and this is the itinerary that will also be shared with TripIt if you've enrolled in the TripIt app. So again, this is a demonstration, so I pulled up another booking for one of our employees here at Shorts Travel, and you'll see that it has the traveler's name, the tickets. There are 2 tickets that this individual purchased for this trip. It's a multi-segment trip, so this is what one of those would look like. You can see the depart dates, the airline confirmation number to then log in and confirm your flights when you are alerted by the airline to do so. You'll see the car that she's going to pick up, her flights onto her second leg, the car that she picks up there, the hotels that she's going to stay at, so on and so forth. And then right down here there are going to be some live links that if I were to select these, it takes me straight to the airline check-in page, kind of a nice feature. And if I wanted to know any of the baggage rules, I could select that, and the baggage rules would come up as well. Once you've received this itinerary, again in your email, and it generally happens within 30 minutes to an hour at the most. It can be delayed from time to time. It is automation. However, if you have not received this, do not go to the airport because something has happened and you need to contact a Shorts Travel agent immediately to inquire about the status of your itinerary. That is booking a air, car, and hotel reservation. I want to take a very quick second to show you how you would do a in-state drive trip. Again, this is going to be an in-state drive trip where we're not using our personal car, but we actually are going to use a rental car. And let's pretend as we get to phase 2 here, since Justin and Stephanie are going to do live demonstrations with the people in phase 2 based on the feedback we get from you in this phase 1 rollout, we're going to do some live presentations similar to this one at each of the campuses. So on Monday the 27th, we're going to depart, and we're going to return back on the 29th. We want to pick up the car at 8 a.m. We're going to be back on Wednesday by 5. We want to rent off airport. And I'm going to show you, I failed to mention this to you before, but because we were traveling to Dallas, there is not a UMS location in Dallas, but there is a UMS location within the state of Maine. So we're going to choose a company location near Bangor, and we want to search within 5 miles. It'll pull all of the off-airport locations, and we do want to choose this car location on Hammond Street. So now we do our search. I'm going to go a little bit quicker this time. We know we want to pick a policy-compliant car. We have an option to do that, so we want to reserve that. So we have our car reservation for the entire trip that we're going to drive through the state. But at this point in time, again, I need to add a hotel. So where do we want to add a hotel? Well, we're not going to stay in Bangor. That's where we're starting. So we need to start at a new location for a hotel. And again, we'll use we want to check in on the 27th, check out on the next day. We want to search with the company location. And the first location, excuse me, the first location that we're going to go to is we're going to go to Augusta. We're going to search. And the results are turned in a very similar fashion. We want to make a selection, if at all possible, with price taken into consideration. We also would like to make a choice that's somewhat close to the university location in Augusta as well. So you'll see that the fares, the rates are now changing. And as we scroll down through here, we know this is a very nice hotel based on the star setting. And look, I can get a fairly reasonable rate at that. So if I look at the rooms, again, I can see I get a $90 rate at the Senator. No complaints there. We'll select that. Again, the same method of review. Agree to the policy cancellation for the room. So we now have our first night's hotel. And we now need to add our second night's hotel. We're going to add a different location. So from Augusta, we're going to go to yet another company location. We're going to go to Southern Maine and Portland. And at this point, we're going to make our hotel selection. We're going to choose a hotel that is policy compliant. We've got a $72 rate at the La Quinta. We'll select that. Retrieving our itinerary. Again, one last review. We pick up our car on Monday. We're returning it by Wednesday. Our first night's hotel is at the Senator. Our second night's hotel is at the La Quinta. Our estimated total for this trip is the $319.44. We next. Put in our reason. Yes, we've been approved. We type in our code. We say next. And we confirm our booking. You'll notice that instead of saying purchase on this one, because there's no funds actually being collected at this time, because we did not have airfare, we are confirming our reservations. And we're finished. Back to our trips library, and you'll see that it is confirmed, and here's the first trip that we did at that time. All right, that completes the travel arrangement process. Anything, Stephanie, that I failed to show?
Not that I can think of, Justin. I think you pretty much covered it all.
Okay. I'm giving you access again,
Okay.
and it's back to you.
Okay, thank you. So our next step is that we went on a trip and we traveled and we're back, and it's time for us to do our expense report. So I'm going to click on the Concur icon once I've logged into Concur Solutions. And from here, I can see my open items up top on the right-hand side. And if I scroll down a little bit here, I can see my tasks, and I can see that I have a bunch of expenses, and I currently have one open report due from previous training. But on the left-hand side, I can see my trips, and I have two that Justin created. We have the car reservation at Enterprise, which is that in-state trip. And then we also have for July that trip to Dallas, Texas to attend a conference. And I can see from the icons that there's airfare and that there's a car involved. If I click on the more and I do the drop down, I can see that the status is that it needs an expense report and that it has been ticketed. So my next step is that I'm going to actually expense this trip and create my travel expense report. So I'm going to click expense this trip. Now it's going to take me into the expense piece of Concur. From here, I can see that I have a trip from Portland to Dallas. It's brought that in. And it's also brought in my creation date, which is today. The one thing that I want to do is that I had an approved request for this trip. So I'm going to want to bring in that request and have it be attached to this expense report. So from request, I'm going to simply click Add. And here it's going to show me all of my available requests that I currently have pending. So if I toggle over that little vertical line, I can actually expand that over so I can get a longer request name. I can see here that I have my conference in Dallas, that 33CQ, and I'm going to click Add. Now what this is doing, it's actually attaching that request to my expense report. Now it has brought in my actual default chart field information, it's brought in my business unit, and it's brought in my business purpose, and it's brought in my travel type. Before I had brought in my request, those fields were blank, and now they're populated. So I'm simply going to click Next. Now, I had previously requested on another trip to have a cash advance. So this screen comes up and it tells me I have a cash advance available. Now, I know that this cash advance is not related to this trip, so I'm not going to select it. But if it had been, I had simply select it and assign cash advance to the report. I'm going to unselect it and select Next. Now it's asking me, does this report include travel meals? Well, yes, it does. I was traveling out of state, and of course I had to have something to eat while I was gone. So I'm going to click Yes. This now brings me to the travel allowances for report screen. When you have a travel meal, the system requires that there's an itinerary for your trip in order for the system to be able to calculate and determine the correct reimbursed amounts that you should receive on a daily basis within the system. Now, because I know that this is a trip that I had already done the request for and that I know that we booked through Concur, I know that the itinerary already exists. I do not have to recreate it at this point. I can simply click Import Itinerary. Here it brings up the two itineraries which are associated to my two current outstanding trips. I have the car reservation, which is the in-state travel that Justin and I are going to do, and then I have the trip from Portland to Dallas. The system has automatically selected that for me, but if I needed to change it, I could simply uncheck it and select the other one. But I'm going to select trip from Portland to Dallas, and I'm going to click Import. By doing this, now I can see my itinerary where I'm departing and arriving and the dates, and then again when I'm returning back to Maine. and I'm going to click Next. This here shows me that my assigned itineraries is that trip from Portland to Dallas, and I have this still available itineraries down here that was created with another test environment. And I'm going to simply click Done. Now I have associated my itinerary and my request with my travel expense report with a few clicks. And now it's telling me, the Concur is telling me, wow, we found some matching credit card transactions that happened on these dates and on this trip. So I can see that there's some airfare and travel, meal, and supplies, which have automatically come through because this is a demo environment, and the car rental for enterprise. So if I click Continue to say, yes, these are associated, it's going to bring in those expenses for me. So it says the selected items have been successfully imported as expenses. And I'm going to say OK. So now on my left-hand side, this is what my expense report looks like. I can see the expenses that have been associated with this trip. And then on the right-hand side, it's showing me some additional available expenses that have come through because this is a demo environment that we're working in. So on the left-hand side, well above that, up above you can see that there's an exception listing, and those are warnings or error messages that have come through from the expenses that have been brought in. So on the left-hand side, let's take a look at this car rental expense. I can see that I have a yellow exclamation point, which is telling me if I hover over that I have an image and original receipt is required for this expense. If I hover over the next icon, it's telling me that this is a credit card transaction, and it's giving me the credit card number that was used and some of the details surrounding that transaction that have come through. If you see IBCP, that means that it has come through on your travel card. And the last icon is just simply detailing your itinerary for that car rental information is what's highlighted in the grayish section, I guess. But it's showing me my complete itinerary. So if I click on car rental, because I know that I need to attach a receipt, it's going to bring me in my expense type, which is a car rental. It's going to tell me the date that it happened, the business purpose, that it's an out-of-state trip, and then I need to attach a receipt. So down here on the right-hand side, I can see attach receipt. I can click on that. Now, from this profile, I can see that there's several available receipts. Now, these are receipts that have automatically come through because I've either photoed them and uploaded them through my mobile device, or I've emailed them to receipts@concur.com, or if it was an e-receipt supplier, their receipt would automatically feed and I'd be able to find it in here. So I could simply just select one of these receipts and click attach. If I by chance had not automatically uploaded or emailed it into my receipt store yet, and the receipt was still living on my hard drive, for example, on my computer, I could go File Selected for Uploading and click Browse and go up to my hard drive and find the image that I want and click Open. Now what it has done, it's showing me that the file selected for uploading is this images2.jpg. And from here I can simply click Attach. Now that image is attached to this expense. If I click on Receipt Image, I should be able to actually see the image. And if I said, oh, this is the incorrect one, I can simply click Detach from Entry on the lower right-hand corner and remove that receipt and actually attach another one. We also have a receipt for our airfare. Again, similar, my expense type, airfare, the business purpose, and again, I know that I need to attach a receipt. So I'm going to go down here, Attach Receipt, and this time I'm going to select one of the receipts that's in my receipt store, and I'm going to simply check the box off and click Attach. Now that receipt is now attached to that expense. If I hover even if I hover over the icon, I can still see the image also that has been attached to that entry. And if I needed to, I can certainly detach it from here. I can zoom it in because that's really small to be able to see it. Or I can, once again, click this receipt image tab and have it brought in there as well. Now, if I click on this hotel individual, I can see that I have a red exclamation point, and if I look up here at the top, I can see my expense hotel individual and the date, and it's telling me this expense entry has sub-entries with one or more exceptions. Because the hotel bill is an itemized bill, because we have nightly lodging expenses, such as your nightly room rate, and then you have taxes, and then you may have parking or whatnot, it is an itemized bill. So if I simply click on this gray arrow here and drop this down, I can see all the itemizations that have come through with this bill, and there's quite a few. It appears that the majority of the red exclamation is that I have some transactions that, some itemizations that have come through that the system was not able to identify. So it's saying undefined, I'm sorry. If I click on that, I can see now on the right-hand side that my expense type is now identified. And in order to clear that, I have to actually say what that expense is. So if I open that up, I can clearly say this was a hotel tax, maybe it was a local tax. Click hotel tax and click save. Now it has assigned that expense as a hotel tax. If I wanted to say that all of them happen to be taxes, I could certainly do them all at once versus doing them individually. So if I select more than one, and I'm going to select them all if I can because there's quite a few. Whoop, I think I just unselected there. Let's select, let's see. There we go. Now on the right hand side, my screen changes. I could certainly delete all these expenses if I wanted to. I could allocate, which means I could define the chart fields that I want them split between, or I can click edit one or more fields for the selected expenses. So I'm going to click edit. From here, I can change my undefined now. I can say that those are all hotel taxes. And it's going to automatically default that it's out of state and that is for conference and training. And I'm going to click save. Now what this is going to do is it's going to update all of those expenses for me so that I don't have to go and drill into each one individually and define what the expense type was. And I'm also going to attach a receipt. And now we're getting the green light of blue. For this car rental, it's telling me that it's missing the city of purchase if I look up here. If I go into my city of purchase, I can certainly, what will default are the most recently used ones that I have previously selected. If I wanted to do a search, I could certainly begin typing in, and it will begin to populate for me. If by chance you have a location, let's try Portland. And as you can see, I'm getting Portland, Australia, United Kingdom, as well as US and United Kingdom. If I look down here at the bottom where it says all countries, I can select, I can do that little drop down, and I could actually just select United States. That way, depending upon where you look and how common the city name is, you can actually filter that list to make it a little bit shorter and easier to select from. And I'm going to just say Portland, Maine. And I can also see that I still need to have a receipt attached to this expense, so I'm going to go attach receipt. This time I'm going to go out to my hard drive, select another receipt, and click, which is showing here. And as you can see that because I used the other receipt out of my receipt store, it's now gone out of my receipt store, no longer available. And click attach. Now that expense has now turned all blue. My exceptions are completely gone, but I can see that I still have 2 yellow for receipts because they are required. So if I tried to submit the report, I'm going to get an error message telling me that it will not submit because it's missing receipts. I can also, if I wanted to, instead of having to do each one individually, I could simply go up here and click Receipts and go click Attach Receipt Images. I could select the receipt that I want for airfare, and then I could go out and find the receipt I want and click Open, and then click Upload down below. It's now turned to blue. I can select my next yellow one, click Browse, select another image, click Open, click Upload, and now it's all blue, and I can click Close. Now my expense report looks pretty good because now it's completely in blue, and I do not see any exceptions up above. So let's say that I need to add a travel meal expense because I did have a meal while I was on this trip. So from the right-hand side, I can see these are all my expense types. Up top are the recently used ones. Now again, the GL account number is hard-coded to the expense types. And depending upon whether or not I selected in-state, out-of-state, or international, drives which GL account is appropriate for that expense. So I'm going to select travel meal expense. Well, let's try this, new expense. Travel meal expense, there we go. So here it's giving me my transaction date of 7/20. Let's see what happens if I say that this was before then, and let's say it was July 3rd. And I'm going to say my vendor is Big G's, and it's out of state, and the amount is $25.12. And I'm going to click Save. My meal expense, because I've entered this in, I'm getting an error message because now it's telling me that due to the date is 7/3, it's outside of the itinerary that I've attached to this expense report. Because remember, we're going from Portland to Dallas between July 15th to July 20th. Since this is not within that date range and it's outside of this itinerary, then it will require me to actually attach another itinerary. But I happen to know that this meal expense was not really July 3rd. That was a incorrect selection on my part. I'm going to say it's July 20th. And now I'm going to click Save. And it will update. And now it's blue. You can see that I requested $25.12 and that my reimbursement is only going to be $16.30. Travel meal expenses will not require a receipt within the system, so it's not necessary for me to upload or snapshot my receipt for this meal. Meals will be reimbursed up to $46 actual. So if it had required a receipt, if it was an expense that required a receipt, we would have seen that little sheet of paper with a little either yellow exclamation point or a circular. So travel meal expenses will not require a receipt. If you happen to be doing catering and group meals, you will need to have a receipt for that. The other item that will not require a receipt will be your tolls, will not require a receipt. So at this point, I would say everything looks pretty good. If I wanted to know exactly what accounts are being charged, I could go up here to go print an email, and I could select UMS Detailed Report. This is going to actually open up my travel expense report. Here I can see my header information that I had put in at the initial entry of the document. Down below that, I can see my airfare. I can see all of my expenses, the accounts that it's going to be charged to, the entire chart field string. Payment type, I can see whether it was a cash transaction or if it was a credit card transaction. If I scroll down, I can see that that travel meal expense was actually a cash expense. It wasn't an expense that I brought over on my credit card or on my travel card. And then I can see the amounts of those transactions. Down below that, you get a summary. It's saying that my report total is 3347.64. It's telling me that the amount approved was 332276. The amount that's due reimbursement to the employee, which was not covered on a travel card, is $16.30. So I'm going to, and from here I can open this up as a PDF. I could email it out if I wanted to, or I could simply print. If I wanted to show my itemizations, I could certainly click off Show Itemizations. And then down here, you can see for that hotel expense, which was a one-line expense, has now dropped down so I can see each charge that happened. I can see all the nightly charges, as well as I can see all the tax charges. So if you want to see the itemization piece of it, you just simply need to make sure you check off this little box up here in the left-hand corner. If I uncheck that, then you can see that it's truncated now, and I'm just getting a total versus individual. And I'm going to close that. Now, I can also look at my approval flow under Details Report, and I can see that who it's going to go to for the approval next, and the approval that it's going to go to is Stephanie LeBlanc, because she has been set up as the manager for William Never. And I'm going to cancel. So everything looks good. So at this point, I'm going to select Submit Report. Here is my final review. It's giving me a user electronic agreement. It's also telling me that receipts were required, and make sure you provide your receipts. Again, if a receipt is required, you cannot submit your report unless you do so. So I'm going to accept and submit at this point that this is in fact university expense. And from here, I get a report successfully submitted. And again, it gives me kind of the details of the financials surrounding that report. How much was the total? How much was rejected? How much is due back to the employee? And I'm going to click Close. Now from here, from my Manage Expense screen, I can see that my trip from Portland to Dallas, in the amount of $3,300 has been submitted, and now it's pending approval by Stephanie LeBlanc. So the next item that I want to cover, because we've had some questions about, is in-state routine frequent travel, and whether or not you'd be able to do a request for travel to authorize it for the entire fiscal year. And you can certainly do that from within Concur. If I go back to my requests, and I can see down here, which I've already generated one, I can create a request and have it cover for the fiscal year and say that this is my fiscal year 15. So it's covering my start date from July 1st of 2014 to June 30th of 2015. And I'm saying that the purpose of my frequent travel is field work. It's in-state. I've put in my default chart field information. And here is when I've just put in a comment, routine in-state travel for fiscal year 15, just to make it clear what this request is for. Then if I look at my expense summary, I can see that what I had entered for my expense, because I have to have an expense associated with a request, I have selected that my expense type was mileage, and of course my transaction date is the first date of my trip. I put in another description saying it's in-state fiscal year 15 routine travel. It's in-state, and I've put in what the total dollar amount it is that I think it's going to cost me to do my in-state routine travel. And then I had simply clicked and submitted the report, submitted the request for it to be approved. Now from this screen here, I can create an expense report. I can still add attachments. I can still print and email this request. I could cancel this request at this time if I wanted to, or I could close and inactivate the request. So if I had totally used the request, I could close and inactivate the request so it gets removed from my active request list. It still is live and in the system, and we can go back and we can still pull it out, but it just removes it from the active list because you have expended all the funds and there's nothing left on it to use. If I click on my Approval Flow tab, here is where I can see that Stephanie LeBlanc approved it on I wish it was summer, but we're not there yet, on January 30th, 2015. If I click this drop down, I can see that the cost object approver, who is Mike Noblet, because he's the financial approver for this chart field string, also approved it on January 30th. So when a request or an expense report is submitted, it will first go to your manager for approval. If the manager approves it, then it will go to the cost object approver, which is the financial approver for that chart field string, which that is driven from the setup within PeopleSoft. If at the time of approving, that person could also add other individuals to the approval workflow if they so choose to do so. So from the manage requests, I can see that I have this fiscal year 15 blanket in-state travel. And from here over on the right-hand side, I see that I now have an available action because it's been approved to expense. So I can simply click expense. And from here, it automatically brings in all of my header information from this request. I can see that I still have $1,056 left. I'm going to simply click next. If I had a cash advance associated with my in-state travel, which I do not, then I could select that, but I'm not going to, so I'm going to select next. Does this include travel meals? No, it does not. It's only strictly for mileage reimbursement. From here, I'm going to select university mileage. I'm going to select the date that I took my trip, which I'll say is today. I'm going to say that I went from Augusta, Maine, and I went to Orono, Maine. And if I knew the distance that I traveled, I could certainly enter in the distance amount here. If I did not know the distance, I could scroll down here and use this mileage calculator tool down on the lower right-hand side. So I'm going to click that. This is pretty similar to MapQuest, and then it brings me up my waypoints, Augusta to Orono, and it's telling me that it's 83.5 miles. If I had the physical address, I could certainly put it in there. I can also select make this a round trip, so it calculates 83.5 one way and 83.7 going the other. And I can go down here on the lower right-hand side and click add mileage to expense. By doing this, it automatically brings in that total mileage for me of 167 miles, and is telling me that my reimbursement amount is $73.48. And from my vehicle ID down here, I can see that it's selected for the standard university rate. If by chance, and I can click save. We'll do one more here as though we're carpooling. So let's say that we're carpooling, so I'm going to go university mileage. And I'm going to say that I'm going from Portland, Maine to Augusta, Maine this time. And I go down to my mileage calculator. And I'm going to make this a round trip. And then I'm going to select down on the lower right hand, add mileage to expense. So it's 111 miles for $48.84. But I'm carpooling this time, so I'm going to select my carpooling rate. By doing so, it increases my amount of my reimbursement. And now I have to indicate how many passengers I have, and I have 2 passengers. It will automatically add me as a passenger, but I need to add somebody else as a passenger as well because I'm carpooling. Carpooling rate will not allow you to only have one person in the vehicle with you. You have to have the number of passengers and how many are there in order for the expense to process. So I can simply put in somebody's name here that I've just recently used. I can certainly go to advanced search. Here I can choose an attendee type, which is what I'm going to say is employee, and I'm going to say the last name is Moody. And I'm going to go over to the right and click search. Here it gives me a search result. It's Kim Moody, and since she's the only one, it's automatically selected her. If I go over to the right hand side, I'm going to say add to expense. And then I'm going to close because it's just the two of us. So now I can see that it's William Never and that it's also Kim Moody who are in the vehicle. And I'm simply going to click save. Now it's giving me my mileage reimbursement for carpooling and for my single mileage. Then I'm simply going to click submit. It's going to give me a final review and a user electronic agreement. And I'm going to click accept and submit. And it's going to give me my summary of the total amount I'm asking for reimbursement, and I'm going to click close. Now, if I go back to my requests and I see this fiscal year blanket in here, you can see that I still have the ability to be able to expense again. Once that travel expense report that I just submitted gets approved, you will see this remaining amount down over here decrease by that travel expense report that has been approved. But because it hasn't been approved yet, it has not recalculated this. So I could simply go to expense again. And I could say it's going to automatically bring in all that information again. Click next. And no cash advance, no travel meals. And I can add in another mileage expense and take away from that blanket request. So the system will enable us to be able to do the blanket request and be able to use that same request and deplete it down to $0 over the fiscal year. The last item that I want to show is to do an employee reimbursement for non-travel related item. So I'm simply, if I, for instance, need to be reimbursed for some supplies and materials personally, I would simply go to expense, and I'm going to create a new report, and I'm going to name it blank seminar. My business purpose now is that it's a non-travel expense reimbursement, and it's in state. And then I'm going to put in my default chart field information because that's where I'm charging it off to. I could certainly charge it, well, I could charge it off to Farmington and select Farmington. And then I could select, say I'm going to charge it to admissions. And then I could select, if I drop down, the fund code that's available for admissions is 00. And for Farmington, they do not use an operating unit, so there's nothing available down there. So I could select and change it that I want to charge it off to Farmington. And then I'm going to click Next. There's no cash advance associated with this, and there's no travel meals because this is a non-travel reimbursement. Over here, it's still going to bring me up my available expenses. Those are the credit card charges that are still sitting out there waiting for me to put onto an expense report. This is non-travel related. It's for materials and supplies. So I'm going to click Add New Expense. Over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to select Supplies and Materials. My transaction date, I'm going to say, is today. It's non-travel reimbursement. My vendor, let's say, is Walmart. No. And say my city of purchase is Augusta. Well, it's Farmington, so we'll say it's Farmington. Me. Here we go. And then my amount is $100 even. And I'm going to click Save. Oh, no. Decline that match. Isn't that interesting? Okay, let's change that because I have a credit card transaction out there that it wants to match to. So let's change it to AOTS. Click Save. Oh, because I'm, okay. Cancel. Let's change it just for the sake of this. Session, let's say it's laundry and dry clean. I need reimbursement. And I'm going to click Save. So it's laundry and dry cleaning. And let's say that for this expense, I can see that it's going to require a receipt, but let's say that we're going to split this expense between two different business units because it's a joint effort of doing some laundry. So I would simply, on the right-hand side, come down here and click Allocate. By clicking Allocate, it will enable me to allocate this expense either by percentage or I can do it by amount. I'm going to select Add a New Allocation, and it's automatically going to split it 50-50, but you can certainly change that if you wanted to 60-40. Then I can change the business unit because let's say half of it's going to go, well, 40% of it is going to actually go to UMS 08. I can select that most recently used in my default, or I could come down here and I could select another entirely different business unit if I wanted to. Now I can see it's being split 60-40, and I'm going to click Save. If I wanted to, I could add a new allocation, so I can split this as many times as I need to, and click Save. It says allocations have been saved. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm going to say Done. Now over here on my expense type, I refer to it as a ladybug, or a peace symbol, or I don't know what it is, but this little blue symbol, I can hover over that, and I can see that this is actually being allocated and the percentages that it's being allocated and who it's going to be allocated to. If I had several expenses, let's add another laundry. And let's add publication and subscriptions. If I had multiple expenses and I wanted the allocation to be based upon the same percentage for all of those expenses, instead of having to drill into each one of them individually and go through that same process, I could certainly click both of them off. And then on the right-hand side, I get the option to allocate the expenses. So on the left-hand side, I can see that I have these two over here that are selected. And on the right-hand side, I can define how I want those. And I could add another allocation. And it's automatically going to split 50-50. I could add a third. I could also add to favorites. So if I'm using the same allocation, the same percentage, and the same chart field information, I could go to add a favorite. So in the future, for instance, if you had a repetitive monthly expense that you were doing, you could add to favorites and it would simply show up in your favorites listing, and you could select it and it would automatically do that for you. So you don't have to drill into each one every time. And if it's repetitive, just save it as a favorite, and then it's there and it's available for you going forward. And I'm going to click Save. And it's going to say Allocation Saved. So now over on the right-hand side, I'm going to click Done, skipping around here. I can see that now these also have these little allocation symbols. And if I scroll over it, I can see that this is being split 3 ways and how it's being split. If you had an expense and you needed to itemize it, which means that it wasn't all, say this wasn't all publication and subscriptions. And basically that message is saying is that since you have allocated on this expense type, by doing an itemization, you're removing that allocation. So I could actually split this and say that yes, part of it is subscriptions, and identify how much of it is. Let's say $20 is. And click Save. Up here on the right-hand side, I can see that the total amount on my bill was $25. I've already itemized $20, and then I still have $5. And I'm going to say that that $5 is actually dues and subscriptions, membership dues. And I'm going to say that that's $5. And I'm going to click Save. Now, my total expense, my header expense is $25, but I was still able to itemize and split that expense between publications and subscriptions and membership and dues. So if you need to itemize an expense to say so much is, so much is for instance, you have office supplies, but maybe postage and delivery service is included in that one expense, you could enter in the one expense and then separate it out down below. So that pretty much covers creating the expense report for my itinerary that has been done in Concur, how to set up the blanket in-state travel requests for routine travel for a fiscal year, how to set up non-travel reimbursement within the system. We've gone over allocation, we've gone over itemization, how to attach receipts. The one thing that I did miss, which I'll go over, is on this one I can see that I need to have a receipt attached, so I'm going to go attach receipt. If in the rare instance that you do not have a receipt, and this is only on an exception basis, there is still available to create a missing receipt affidavit. So if I do not have a receipt, I can click on this little blue link and it's going to say that I want to use a missing receipt affidavit. I would simply select the receipt that I want to associate that affidavit with, and the affidavit is basically saying that it is a business university expense and that you understand that it's to be used on an exception basis and not as a regular means of documentation, and that this is a legitimate expense. And I'm going to select accept and create. And now my receipt icon has turned blue, but now I'm getting a message that says, as another reminder, this is for an exception basis only. The other thing is that it will also require me to put a comment on this expense, because we need to know why you were missing the receipt. So you have to justify why you had to use the missing receipt affidavit. So I'm just going to say washing machine to control. And I'm going to click Save. Now that I saved it, my red exclamation point is gone, but now I have a triangle with a yellow as a warning, once again, just to say, please be advised the missing receipt affidavit is meant to be used on an exception basis and not as a regular means of documentation. So the missing receipt affidavit is still available within the system, but as always, please always attach receipts when they're available, and please always try to obtain those receipts. Is there anything else that I've missed, Mike or Justin, that you want me to talk about? I know that we're getting close to our time limit.
I think you did a good job of covering it from my perspective. This is Justin.
Thank you, Justin.
Stephanie, I think we're good. I think the one piece that I would mention is that we saw in several instances where we've got a manager approver and a cost object approver. Within the departments that those folks reside, there can be a delegate. So we saw Justin use the concept of a delegate to book for other people. Mm-hmm. There is also the concept of delegates for approvals. So, for example, if a high-level vice president within the university doesn't want to do the approvals, then one of the folks within the department who has delegate authority for that person could log in, do the approvals in their name.
Yep, that manager or that person would just need to go into their profile settings, and they could set up their expense delegate, for example. In here, they could add the person that they want to delegate those roles to or those tasks to, and then they could select, whether or not they can approve on their behalf. If they are set up to be able to approve, the individual, such as myself, this is William Never, you would simply click on your profile and you would say administer for another user if you were the delegate, and say I am the delegate or travel assistant. And if you click on the drop down, you can see that William S. Never is the delegate for William L. Never. So if I was to click on William L. Never and click apply, now I've turned red up here on the right hand side, and it's saying that I'm administering for William L. Never. Now, William L. Never has not given me any approving authority, but he has enabled me as a travel arranger. So now I can go in and book travel on William L. Never's behalf. It's a little bit confusing because we use William Never. And once I'm done doing things once I'm done being a delegate, I would simply just click this End Admin Session, and then it's going to bring me back to my own personal profile. So the other thing with the workflow approval process is that if you're set up as a delegate and you prepare an expense report and you are also a manager, you cannot approve the expense report. So it sees it as, the system recognizes it as still as a self-approver. So you cannot set up your manager as your delegate. If you do, your manager can go in and create reports, and they can create requests and everything on your behalf, but they cannot approve any of it, even though they're a delegate, because the system recognizes that as a self-approval, because you have the same person generating the reports and then the same person trying to do the approval process. Does that pretty much cover it, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. We have 1 or 2 minutes left. We've had a lot of really great questions. I want to give everybody the opportunity before we close down the session to ask any other questions that they've got out there. One piece of information, we've had a couple of questions about when we're going to be doing this. Our goal is to activate the system for our Phase 1 participants the 3rd week in February. We will be contacting each of the users that we log into the system to tell you that it's time to update your profile. More than likely that'll probably happen next week as we're doing the final loads of all of the employees into the system this week. And beyond that, we should be ready to go for the first 3rd week in February. And then Phase 2, which will be the remaining university employees, guests, students, etc., will be the end of April. So Sue York asked about still using the advance and voucher. The paper process, as it happens now, will go away. So all Phase 1 participants will be required to use the Concur system for expense reimbursement and booking. And then as we go into Phase 2, then again the paper vouchers and advances will go away as well, and all of this will be handled within the Concur system. The final slide that we're showing has some links to our training materials and things of that nature. We will be sending out the slide deck to all participants. As David mentioned at the beginning, we will have a recorded version of this out on our website at the web address that you see there. And then Stephanie, if you switch to the next slide, you'll also have contact information for folks that you can ask, so that when you walk away from this particular presentation, you can ask those questions. And the last question I'm going to answer out loud, Darylyn, what if we've already booked some stuff? We're working through the transition methodology where we've got things that are booked the manual way and expenses are not in Concur. So we're working on that now. We'll have a plan for everybody as we go into Phase 2. If there are no other questions, we're going to let everybody go. I thank you for participating in the session, and again, feel free to reach out to any of the 3 folks you see on the slide that we'll be sending out to you with any questions. Thank you very much, and we will talk to you soon.